Dr. Taiwan Park loved his work more than anything else. For 3 years, he had studied the strange bacteria from the distant moon of Titan. Today was special. The bacteria were growing faster than ever before. Just a little more, he whispered to himself. His eyes never left the microscope. The small blue lights of the bacteria pulsed under the glass. Each pulse was stronger than the last. The lab around him was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. The white walls and steel tables were clean and orderly. This was his second home. Sometimes he slept here rather than return to his small room in the living quarters. The first alarm was soft, a gentle beep that most people would notice. Taiwan heard it, but didn't look up. Alarms happened sometimes. Usually, they meant nothing. The second alarm was louder. Red lights began to flash on the control panel. The screen showed rising temperature in the sample container. The bacteria were moving too fast, creating heat. Strange, Taiwan muttered, making notes. The growth rate is increasing exponentially. He adjusted his glasses and smiled. This could be the breakthrough he had waited for. The third alarm blared through the lab. This one was impossible to ignore. The containment system was failing. The sealed environment keeping the bacteria isolated was breaking down. Still, Taiwan didn't move away. He had worked too hard for this. The bacteria were showing signs of adapting to human tissue. They could repair damaged cells. They might cure diseases, regrow limbs, even extend human life. He couldn't leave now. The door to the lab slid open with a hiss. Station Commander Ji-Young Kim ran in, her face tight with worry. Her uniform was perfect as always, but her usual calm was gone. Taiwan, what are you doing? The alarms are going off throughout the station. She pointed to the flashing red lights. Just a few more minutes, he said, not looking up. I'm recording a major breakthrough. The bacteria air. There's no time. Ji-Young moved to his side. She looked at the containment unit. The seals were starting to smoke. The system is critical. We need to evacuate now. The emergency lights turned the room blood red. The station's computer spoke in its flat voice. Warning. Containment breach imminent. All personnel evacuate Section 5 immediately. Taiwan finally looked up, panic rising. My samples. I need to secure them. He reached for the special container that could safely transport the bacteria. Ji-Young grabbed his arm. No, there's no time. You don't understand, he pulled away. This could save millions of lives. 3 years of work. The first explosion came from the next lab. The floor shook. Ceiling panels fell around them. Ji-Young didn't hesitate. She tackled Taiwan to the floor as a piece of metal crashed where he had been standing. We go now or we die, she shouted. Taiwan tried to crawl toward his samples. Ji-Young dragged him back, her strength surprising him. He fought against her grip, desperate to save his work. The second explosion was closer. The containment unit cracked, releasing a cloud of vapor. Ji-Young pulled Taiwan to his feet and pushed him toward the door. Run, she ordered. They ran through the corridor as the emergency barriers began to close. The station was sealing off the damaged section. Ji-Young pushed Taiwan forward, her hand on his back. Faster. They reached the last door just as it was closing. Ji-Young shoved Taiwan through the narrow opening. He fell hard, pain shooting through his side. Ji-Young barely made it through before the door sealed. She pulled Taiwan up, ignoring his cries of pain. 3 of his ribs were broken, but there was no time to be gentle. The escape pods are 50 meters ahead, she said, half carrying him now. Behind them, more explosions rocked the station. The research wing was coming apart. All of Taiwan's work was being destroyed. They reached the escape pods as the final alarm sounded. Ji-Young pushed Taiwan into the nearest pod and jumped in after him. She hit the launch button without waiting. The pod shot away from the station with a violent jerk. Through the small window, they watched as the research wing erupted in a silent flash of light. The explosion was beautiful in a terrible way, orange and blue fire blooming in the emptiness of space. Tai-1 pressed his hand against the cold glass of the window. His life's work vanished before his eyes. 3 years of research, gone in seconds. The bacteria that could have changed human history, destroyed. Beside him, Jai-Yun checked the pod systems and sent a distress signal to the main Earth station. They would be rescued in a few hours. "You're injured," she said, noticing how he held his side. "There's a medical kit under the seat." Tai-1 didn't answer. He just stared at the fading glow where the lab had been. Tears formed in his eyes, not from the pain in his ribs, but from what he had lost. Jai-Yun put her hand on his shoulder. "You're alive, Tai-1. That's what matters." He turned to look at her, his eyes cold. "No," he said quietly. "That's not all that matters." 6 months had passed since the explosion. Tai-1's ribs had healed, but his heart had not. He sat alone in his apartment on Earth's moon colony, watching news reports about his lawsuit. His name appeared on every screen. His face was on every channel. The ungrateful scientist, they called him. Tai-1 turned off the screens and looked at the small box on his table. It contained the only remaining photos of his research, saved on a backup drive he had kept in his quarters. Not enough to continue his work, but enough to prove what he had lost. Today was the first day of the trial. He put on his best suit and looked in the mirror. Dark circles hung under his eyes. He hadn't slept well since the accident. Every night, he saw his bacteria samples burning, years of work destroyed in seconds. The orbital courthouse floated above Earth, a giant ring of steel and glass, where the most important space cases were heard. Tai-1's shuttle docked at the private entrance. His lawyer had suggested this to avoid the protesters. "Are you ready, Dr. Park?" his lawyer asked as they walked through the quiet hallway. "Yes," Tai-1 said, though his stomach twisted with mirrors. He knew the public hated him. The media had painted him as a monster who was suing the woman who saved his life. They didn't understand what had been lost. The main courtroom was massive, with high ceilings and walls made of transparent aluminum. Earth turned slowly beyond the windows, blue and peaceful. The room was packed with people, reporters, and even some non-humans. The orbital court handled cases involving multiple species. Tai-1 walked to his table without looking at the crowd. He could feel their eyes on him, hear their whispers. At the other table sat Jai-Yun Kim. She wore her commander's uniform, her posture perfect. She didn't look at him. The court announcer stood. "All rise for Judge Da Jung-moon." Everyone stood as the judge entered. He was an older man with stern eyes and a reputation for fairness. He sat, and the room fell silent. "The case of Park versus Kim will now begin," the announcer said. His voice echoed through the room. "The plaintiff, Dr. Tai-1 Park, alleges that Commander Jai-Yun Kim's actions, while saving his physical person, constituted negligence resulting in the destruction of irreplaceable research with galaxy-wide medical implications." The words sounded cold and formal, but they were true. Tai-1 had spent 3 years studying those bacteria. They could repair damaged cells, heal wounds, maybe even cure diseases that had plagued humans for centuries. All gone because Jai-Yun wouldn't give him 5 more minutes to save his samples. The gallery whispered again. On the walls, news headlines scrolled by on silent screens. "Scientist sues rescuer. Gratitude dies in space." Another read. "Park claims billions could die without his research." Tai-1's lawyer began speaking, explaining the value of the lost research. Tai-1 hardly listened. He was looking at Jai-Yun. She sat calmly, her face showing nothing. Had she felt anything when she destroyed his life's work? Did she understand what she had done? Across the room, Jai-Yun's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Min Seo, leaned close to her client. "He's serious about this," Jai-Yun whispered, still not believing that the trial was actually happening. "Dead serious," Min Seo replied. "He claims your reckless rescue destroyed research that could have saved billions. But don't worry. No one blames you for saving a life. Jai-yun wasn't so sure. The judge's face gave nothing away as he listened to the opening statements. Outside the courthouse, the protests grew louder. 3 different species had gathered: humans, the tall blue Arulians from the nearby star system, and the small furry Nentek who had colonies on Mars. They held signs reading, "Lives before labias, and gratitude not ilaidoduzites." An Arulian reporter stood in front of the crowd, speaking into a camera. The case has sparked outrage across the solar system. Many feel that Dr. Park's lawsuit sets a dangerous precedent. If we can be sued for saving lives, will people hesitate to help in emergencies? Inside, Taiwan was called to speak. He walked to the front of the court on shaky legs. "Dr. Park," the judge said, "please explain to the court what was lost in the accident." Taiwan took a deep breath. This was his chance to make them understand. "I discovered bacteria on Titan that could repair human cells," he said. His voice was quiet at first, then grew stronger. "My early tests showed they could heal wounds 5 times faster than normal. They could regrow damaged tissue. With more research, they might have cured diseases, extended human life, helped people walk again after spinal injuries." He looked directly at Jai-yun. Commander Kim knew how important this work was. "The station alarms gave us time to save the samples, but she forced me to leave everything behind. 3 years of work destroyed, potentially billions of lives that could have been saved, lost forever." The courtroom was silent. For a moment, some people seemed to be considering his words. Then Jai-yun stood up. "May I respond, Your Honor?" The judge nodded. "Dr. Park," she said, her voice clear and strong. "When the final alarm sounded, we had 47 seconds before the containment breach reached critical levels. I made the call that your life was worth more than your research." Their eyes met across the courtroom. In that moment, Taiwan knew one thing with certainty. This was only the beginning of their battle. The second day of the trial brought more reporters and curious onlookers. People had to be turned away from the orbital courthouse. Everyone wanted to see the ungrateful scientist and the hero commander face each other. Taiwan had slept poorly again. He kept thinking about his lost research. Not just the bacteria, but his notes, his equipment, his careful documentation of 3 years of work. Gone. If only Jai-yun had given him a few more minutes. If only she had understood. The judge, Sung-ho Lee, entered the courtroom. He was known for being fair but strict. His black robes seemed to absorb the light around him. "We will continue with the testimony of Dr. Park," Judge Lee announced. Taiwan walked to the witness stand. He had prepared for this moment. He carried a small data pad with images of his research results. "Dr. Park, please explain to the court the scientific importance of your work," his lawyer prompted. Taiwan touched the data pad, and a large hologram appeared in the center of the court. It showed microscopic images of nerve cells growing and connecting. "This is what the bacteria sample ARC-7349 could do," Taiwan said. His voice was steadied despite the hostile murmurs from the gallery. "The bacteria produced a protein that stimulated neural growth. In my tests, it demonstrated complete neural regeneration. The images changed to show before and after scans of lab tissue. Imagine spinal injuries healed, degenerative diseases reversed," Taiwan continued. "Not just for humans, but for every sentient species in our coalition. The Arulians suffer from a neural disease that affects 1 in 4 of their people. The Nentek have spinal fragility that limits their lifespan. My research could have helped them all." The courtroom was quiet now. Even those who had come to scoff at him were watching the images with interest. "And you believe Commander Kim's actions destroy this potential?" his lawyer asked. "Yes," Taiwan said simply. "There were protocols for saving critical research, special containers that could survive extreme conditions. If she had given me 2 minutes, I could have saved the primary samples." Judge Lee studied Taiwan carefully. No further questions from the plaintiff at this time. Taiwan's lawyer said. Jai-yun's lawyer stood. She was a sharp-looking woman with intelligent eyes. "Dr. Park, was there an evacuation protocol for your station?" "Yes," Taiwan admitted. "And what does that protocol state about containment breaches involving unknown biological materials?" Taiwan hesitated. "It states that personnel evacuation is the first priority." "Thank you. No further questions." Judge Lee turned to Jai-yun. "Commander Kim, please take the stand." Jai-yun walked forward calmly. She wore her uniform again, the medals on her chest catching the light. 6 months after the accident, she still looked exactly as Taiwan remembered her, confident, controlled, certain of her decisions. "Commander Kim, why didn't you allow Dr. Park to secure his samples before evacuation?" Judge Lee asked directly. "Protocol dictates human life takes precedence," Jai-yun answered firmly. "The containment breach was catastrophic. There wasn't time." "Could you elaborate on the time frame?" her lawyer asked. "When I entered Dr. Park's lab, the station computer had already issued a Level 3 breach warning. That means complete failure within 60 seconds. By the time I convinced Dr. Park to move, we had less than 40 seconds. She looked directly at Taiwan. "I had to make a choice. The samples or his life. I chose his life." The gallery murmured approval. Jai-yun continued, "Station protocol is clear. No research, no matter how valuable, takes priority over human life." The questioning continued for another hour. Jai-yun remained calm, answering clearly and precisely. Taiwan felt his case slipping away. The public already thought he was wrong, and now the judge seemed to be siding with Jai-yun as well. Just as Jai-yun's testimony was concluding, the court doors opened. A small woman in a science uniform entered. She walked with purpose down the center aisle. "Your Honor," Jai-yun's lawyer said, "we weren't expecting any more witnesses today." "I wasn't scheduled," the woman said, stepping forward. "My name is Dr. Sun Choi. I was working in the lab adjoining Dr. Park's during the accident. I have relevant information for this case." Judge Lee looked surprised but nodded. "The court will hear you, Dr. Choi. Please take the stand." Sun Mei walked to the front. She was short with round glasses and a serious face. Taiwan remembered seeing her occasionally at the station, but they had rarely spoken. "Dr. Choi, what information do you have for this court?" Judge Lee asked. Sun Mei took a deep breath. "I was working late the night before the accident. I was interested in Dr. Park's research, so I took a small sample for my own studies." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Sun Mei continued, "I preserved a small sample. It's incomplete, but it exists." Taiwan's eyes widened. His work wasn't entirely lost after all. He felt his heart race with sudden hope. "You took samples without permission." Judge Lee frowned. "Yes, Your Honor. It was against protocol, and I accept responsibility for that. But when the accident happened, I was in my quarters. The sample was with me, not in the lab. It survived." The courtroom erupted in conversation. Judge Lee banged his gavel for order. "Where is this sample now?" he demanded. "In secure storage at the Luna Science Facility," Sun Mai replied. "I didn't know what to do with it after the accident. When I heard about this trial, I knew I had to come forward." Taiwan couldn't believe what he was hearing. A sample survived. His work could continue. He looked at Jai-yun and saw her watching him carefully, her expression unreadable. "Your Honor," Taiwan's lawyer said quickly, "this new evidence changes the nature of our case. We request time to examine the sample and reassess the damages." "Granted," Judge Lee said. "This court will recess until tomorrow, while we verify Dr. Choi's claims." As people filed out of the courtroom, talking excitedly about this new development, Taiwan approached Sun Mei. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice shaking. Sun Mei adjusted her glasses nervously. "I was afraid I'd lose my job for taking the sample without permission, but I couldn't let this trial continue without telling the truth." Taiwan looked across the room at Jai-yun, who was speaking quietly with her lawyer. The case had just become much more complicated. A part of his work had survived. But did that change the fact that Jai-yun had acted wrongly? He wasn't sure anymore. The third day of the trial brought more people than ever to the orbital courthouse. News of the surviving sample had spread across the solar system. Many now wondered if Taiwan might win his case after all. Taiwan arrived early, feeling more confident than he had in months. The sample that Dr. Sunmei had saved might be small, but it could be enough to restart his research. Perhaps the lawsuit would end with a settlement. Jai-yun would admit she had been too hasty, and the court would award him funding to continue his work. Judge Lee called the court to order. Before we continue with new testimony, Commander Kim's attorney has requested to present additional evidence. Jai-yun's lawyer stood up. She looked serious, but also somewhat satisfied, like someone holding a winning card. Your Honor, we would like to play security recording TC-117 from the research station, she said. It was recovered from the station's backup systems and shows events in Dr. Park's lab just before Commander Kim arrived. Taiwan frowned. He didn't remember any cameras in his lab. Proceed, Judge Lee said. The large display in the center of the courtroom flickered to life. The image showed Taiwan's lab from above. The timestamp showed it was 15 minutes before the evacuation. On the screen, Taiwan bent over his microscope. He looked excited, making notes quickly on his tablet. But something was happening in the containment unit beside him. The bacteria sample was visibly growing, spreading faster than seemed normal. A red light began to flash on the control panel. The Taiwan in the video reached over and tapped the panel. The alarm stopped. The courtroom was completely silent. Everyone watched as the video continued. 3 minutes later, another alarm sounded, more urgent this time. Again, Taiwan silenced it without really looking at the warning message. The bacteria were now spreading rapidly through the containment unit, pressing against the inner barriers. Stop the video, Judge Lee ordered. He turned to Taiwan. Dr. Park, did you silence station alarms? Taiwan couldn't speak. He had been so focused on his work that day, so excited by the results. He remembered hitting the panel to stop the annoying sounds, but he hadn't really read the warnings. I was focused on the positive results, he finally said. The bacteria were showing exceptional growth rates. Continue the video, Judge Lee said. The recording showed the bacteria breaking through the first containment barrier, just as the third alarm began. This one Taiwan couldn't silence. It was a station-wide alert. That was when Jai-yun had burst into the lab. The video ended. The courtroom remained silent, but Taiwan could feel the mood shifting. Jai-yun stood up. She didn't look triumphant, just tired and a little sad. You received 3 automatic warnings, Jai-yun stated. The bacteria had mutated. It wasn't just healing tissue. It was consuming it. Taiwan's face drained of color. He hadn't realized. The rapid growth he had been so excited about, could it have been something else? Jai-yun's lawyer displayed another set of images on the screen. These are the station's automatic analyses of the bacteria at different stages. As you can see, by the time Commander Kim entered the lab, the bacteria had changed significantly from Dr. Park's earlier records. The images showed the bacteria developing new structures, becoming more aggressive in how they interacted with the test tissues. I didn't see this, Taiwan whispered. No, you didn't, Jai-yun said. Her voice wasn't angry, just firm. Because you silenced the warnings. The bacteria had mutated into something dangerous. Our station AI ran a simulation based on its behavior. The screen changed again, showing a simulation of the bacteria spreading, first throughout the station, then to any ships that might have docked, and eventually to Earth and beyond. I made a choice, Jai-yun continued, her voice softening. Save you and destroy the samples, or risk a pathogen that our simulation showed could have infected every oxygen-breathing species in the quadrant. The judge examined the station's final risk assessment that Jai-yun's lawyer provided. These projections indicate a 78% probability of uncontained spread if even one sample had escaped. He looked at Taiwan. Dr. Park, did you realize this danger? Taiwan slumped in his chair, the terrible truth dawning on him. He had been so focused on what his bacteria could do that he hadn't considered what they might become. The healing properties he had observed were just the first stage of something much more dangerous. No, he admitted, I was only seeing the potential benefits. Suddenly Choi, who was sitting in the gallery, suddenly stood up. Your Honor, if the bacteria mutated in this way, the sample I preserved is potentially dangerous. Jai-yun finished for her. It needs to be destroyed immediately. Taiwan felt sick. Not only had he almost caused a disaster, but he had then sued the person who prevented it. The person who saved his life and possibly millions of others. Dr. Choi, Judge Lee said, where exactly is this sample now? In a secure containment unit at Luna Science Facility, Sun Mai answered, her voice shaking slightly. Triple sealed according to protocol. But if what the commander says is true, even that might not be enough. Judge Lee turned to Taiwan. Dr. Park, as the primary researcher, what do you recommend we do with the remaining sample? The courtroom waited. Taiwan could feel everyone watching him. 6 months ago, he would have fought to keep the sample, to continue his research. But now, seeing the evidence, understanding what could have happened, it should be destroyed, he said quietly, under controlled conditions, with full safety protocols. A murmur ran through the courtroom. No one had expected him to say that. And your lawsuit? Judge Lee asked. Taiwan looked at Jai-yun. For the first time, he saw her not as the person who had destroyed his work, but as the person who had made the right choice when he couldn't. I withdraw it, Taiwan said. Commander Kim acted correctly. I was wrong. The simple words seemed to echo in the silent courtroom. Jai-yun's expression softened slightly, perhaps in surprise, perhaps in relief. Judge Lee nodded. Very well. This court will issue orders for the safe destruction of the remaining sample. As for the lawsuit, it is dismissed at the plaintiff's request. As people began to leave the courtroom, Taiwan remained seated, still processing everything he had learned. His great discovery had been a potential disaster. His anger at Jai-yun had been completely misdirected. He had never felt more ashamed or more grateful. The courtroom was quiet as Judge Sung-ho made his final statement. For 4 days, the solar system had watched the trial of the ungrateful scientist. Now it was ending in a way no one had expected. Case dismissed, Judge Sung-ho announced, his voice firm. Furthermore, the court commends Commander Kim for her decisive action that likely prevented an interspecies pandemic. Reporters hurried from the room to break the news. Taiwan stood slowly, feeling both empty and relieved. The anger that had driven him for 6 months was gone, replaced by a heavy sense of responsibility. He had nearly caused a disaster, then blamed the person who stopped it. Jai-yun gathered her papers at the other table. She had won, but she didn't look happy or triumphant. Just tired. Taiwan walked over to her. The room was emptying, but a few people lingered, watching them curiously. Commander Kim, he said, his voice low. I want to apologize. Jai-yun looked up at him, her face unreadable. For the lawsuit. For everything, Taiwan said. For ignoring the warnings. For fighting you during the evacuation. For not understanding what you did for me. For everyone. Something in Jai-yun's expression softened slightly. You're a good scientist, Dr. Park. You just forgot that safety matters more than discovery. I won't forget again, he promised. They walked out of the courthouse together. Outside, reporters called questions and cameras flashed. Taiwan and Jai-yun ignored them all and walked to the shuttle bay. Before they parted, Jai-yun paused. What will you do now? Taiwan hadn't thought that far ahead. His career might be over. Who would trust him after this? I don't know, he admitted. Try to rebuild, I suppose, if anyone will have me. Jai-yun studied him for a moment. I might have an idea. Call me in a week. 3 months passed. The headlines about the lawsuit faded. News stories took their place. Few people noticed when the Earth Space Agency announced a new research partnership on Europa, Jupiter's icy moon. The containment research facility was built into Europa's thick ice crust. Its white walls and reinforced windows were designed to withstand the moon's harsh conditions. Inside, 20 scientists from different species worked together on some of the most dangerous and promising research in the solar system. Taiwan checked the latest readings on his tablet. The new bacteria samples were stable, showing none of the aggressive mutations of his previous work. After months of careful study, he was finally making progress again. A group of important visitors entered the main lab. Jia Yun led them, pointing out various safety features. She caught Taiwan's eye and nodded slightly. It had been her idea to bring him here, to this new facility that she was in charge of. "I need someone who understands danger," she had told him when she offered him the job. "Someone who won't make the same mistake twice." Taiwan joined the group as they reached the central containment area. The visiting officials, 2 humans, an Arulian and a Nentech, looked at the equipment with interest. "The failsafes are triple redundant now," Taiwan explained to them. "And we've incorporated Jia Yun's emergency protocols into the lab design itself." He showed them how the system worked, how it would automatically seal and destroy any sample that showed dangerous changes, how it prioritized the safety of the station and its personnel above all else. Jia Yun nodded. "Our partnership ensures both scientific progress and security." The small vial between them contained a new version of Taiwan's original bacteria. After the trial, Dr. Sunmi's sample had been destroyed as ordered by the court. But before that happened, the genetic code had been fully sequenced. With that information, Taiwan had been able to recreate a safer version, one that couldn't mutate in the same dangerous ways. "This strain has shown promising results in neural repair," Taiwan told the visitors. "But we're taking it step by step, with constant monitoring." The officials seemed impressed. They moved on to the next part of the tour, asking Jia Yun questions about the facility's emergency procedures. Taiwan stayed behind, watching the bacteria through the containment glass. They were beautiful in their way, these tiny organisms that might someday help heal injured people across the galaxy. But now he saw them clearly, not just for their potential, but for their risks. Sometimes saving a life means saving someone from themselves, Jia Yun said quietly as she returned to his side. The visitors had moved on with another guide. Taiwan nodded, watching the bacteria that had nearly been his downfall. And sometimes the greatest discoveries come after our greatest mistakes. They stood together in comfortable silence. Outside the lab windows, Europa's ice fields stretched endlessly, bright under Jupiter's glow. Inside, they had created something new, a place where science could advance safely, where risks were acknowledged and managed, not ignored. The lawsuit that had made headlines across the galaxy had transformed into something unexpected, a model for responsible scientific advancement that balanced progress with protection. "Do you regret bringing me here?" Taiwan asked suddenly. "After everything that happened?" Jia Yun considered the question. "No," she said finally. "You made a terrible mistake. Then you admitted it and learned from it. That's rare." "I still think about that day," Taiwan confessed. "About what might have happened if you hadn't come into my lab when you did." "I do too," Jia Yun said. "But I prefer to think about what we're doing now. This work could help millions." She smiled slightly, the first real smile Taiwan had seen from her. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "If the alarms ever go off in here," Jia Yun said, "don't argue with me. Just run." Taiwan laughed, surprised at the joke and at how good it felt to laugh again. "I promise." Together, they turned back to their work, side by side in the soft blue light of the lab.